The height of sophistication used to be toilet paper rolls covered in crocheted dolls, and I'm here to tell you that time has come again. I'm Amanda Brown, and you're coming on this journey with me. You're going to need some fusible interfacing, lightweight or medium weight, some quilt batting, some fabric, and scraps, and your OLFA tools such as these, and a sewing machine. I have a ton of scraps, so we're going to use those. And I'm going to first trim these up to 2-inch squares. Scraps are perfect, but feel free to cut from your yardage. Who am I to stop you? You're going to want some measurements from your toilet paper roll because they're all different sizes. Measure how tall it is, add 2 inches, and then measure around it, and then multiply that number by 2. This gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Use those measurements to cut out a piece of fusible interfacing with the fusible side up, plus an extra square that is about 10 inches by 10 inches for the top. And you're going to lay out your 2-inch squares so they look beautiful, and you're just going to nestle them side by side into a nice little framework. And then you get to iron them down. And that's the beauty of this, is we are going to piece these lickety-split by ironing them to this fusible interfacing first and then sewing. Take them over to your sewing machine, fold over the first column, and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and repeat this for every column until they're all done. Grab your OLFA applique scissors, and you're going to snip these in between each row along the seam allowance, which is going to let us fold it the other way. Take it back to your sewing machines, then fold the row back over, and we're going to sew them in the opposite direction. Just make sure those seam allowances are nice and lined up, and then give them a nice press. Layer this top with quilt batting underneath and then a piece of lining. It doesn't have to be fancy, it's going to be on the inside. Secure all 3 layers together by quilting them or just sewing over the top. It doesn't have to be fancy. Next, we're going to trim this rectangle up so it's nice and clean edged again, and finish one of the long edges. Either fold it under 1/2 inch and sew it, or I put a little binding on there. Fold it in half so you have the short edges lined up, and sew those together with right sides facing with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to do some math together. Do not fear. Here's the equation. Take that circumference and we're going to divide that by 6.28. And then you're all going to add 0.25 for a seam allowance. And that is the number of your radius, and that's what we're going to use on our OLFA rotary circle cutter. Once I have that set, I'm going to remove the cap. I'm going to place that pivot point into the middle of my square, and I'm going to cut out a beautiful circle for the top of my toilet paper roll cover. To make it easier to put this top on, I like to find 4 points, equal points, that I can line up between the top cover and the sides, and that just makes it so much easier. So give it a little mark and then pin those or clip those into place, getting ready to sew it together. And I just take it over to my sewing machine using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I stitch that together. Don't worry about this raw edge, it's going to be inside of the cover. And really, how often are we handling these and washing them? Well, we might be washing them more than I think. And then we're going to turn these right side out, and just spend a little time cleaning up that seam, making sure that's pushed out. And there you go. You can throw it on your toilet paper rolls, just like that. For some extra flair, cut a hole in the top and put in half a Barbie doll. Hope you love this. Can't wait to see yours.